So what I'll do is I'll briefly give you my ideas about the topic, which is uh, culture, politics, and literature. And then I hope you have some questions, and I would be happy to answer those. And if you have ever visited my YouTube channel, you will see that literature, culture, and politics is the tagline of my channel. But the reason it's there is because that's how I see literary studies, right? Uh, in my understanding of the way we live our lives, there is no apolitical existence. We are always in a politics, right? We are overdetermined by it in so many ways. And culture, of course, and politics, they fuse into each other. One feeds into the other changes or reforms or sometimes transforms the other. And any literature that is produced, it's never really produced in a vacuum, right? The person who writes it is situated in a culture, has been constructed by that culture in so many ways, and has a politics. And when they write literature, that representation is part literary, part political, part cultural. All of that combined it comes to us as an object of study. And similarly, when we approach it, we also are constituted beings, right? We are political, we have a politics, we have a belief system, we have a cultural grounding that defines what we value, what we do not. So at both ends, in its creation, but also in its reading and analysis and scholarship, the act of reading is overdetermined by the culture, by the politics, and then by the literary aspects of the text itself. And I think keeping that in mind as scholars of literature and as professors of literature and students of literature is important, because we have the misfortune of still not having broken out of our colonial mindset. Right? So you go to any English department in Pakistan, when you say English literature, all they think about is Shakespeare and Ben Jonson and maybe a little bit of Thomas Hardy and Coleridge and Wordsworth. That is our idea of English literature. And it is so far detached from what our culture is or what our politics is, right? And then we are trained also in a sort of a anachronistic way of treating literature as if it's an object in itself that exists in a vacuum and talking about it as if exists in a vacuum. So what my effort has been here to my students over here and students in Pakistan is to encourage grounded readings, right? Readings that are grounded in our own cultural identities, readings that are informed by the politics within a text, but also our own politics. And then do the work of culture. And what it enables us to do then is not just bring an ossified, immutable idea of what our culture is, but it brings it to bear upon a text. And maybe in the process then makes us question our own politics, makes us question our own cultural assumptions, right? And if we do that, then literature can be transformative because we are not treating it as a static object of study. We are treating it as something dynamic, which has a politics, right? Which is situated contextually in the politics of its creation, but also the politics of the moment of reading itself. And so that's why I like this topic, because where it takes us as scholars of literature is to this realm where we can't really do effective reading of literature or talking about literature or scholarship without having a thorough grounding in culture, without having a thorough grounding in politics, right? And then in what constitutes literature. These three things must come together. to constitute a reading self that is aware of that. But a reading self that knows that things are movable, things are changeable, malleable, right? Only then will literature, will do the transformative thing that it does or it is supposed to do. So these are some of my thoughts off the cuff. I mean, not off the cuff. This is what I think about. This is what I've lived for most of my life and taught and written about. Now, what I see in my idea of Pakistani academy is slightly dated, right, and maybe a bit ill-informed, is that there is still that legacy, right, that legacy of thinking of literature as this exalted object, that we must then go and develop some mode of elevated reading and understanding it, and only then we'll be able to read it carefully and have opinions about it. That was there when we were studying, of course, and some of it is still there. This significance accorded to terminologies and vocabularies, and not necessarily deep thought, deep engagement with literature. So let's say, how is a political reading accomplished of a text? Right? You pick up any novel, right? Some novels are overtly political, right? Because they're written as political novels. How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia is a political novel, right? Because it's a critique of neoliberal capital and economy. The Case of Exploding Mangoes is a political novel, right? If you go to Urdu, Khuda Ki Basti is a political novel. Nadar Log is a political novel. They carry that load with them. Most of them were leftist novels, right? Until we got rid of the Pakistani left. So, but even if you look at texts that claim to be just artistic and work of art, they cannot escape the politics of their times. They cannot escape the politics of the author. They cannot escape the politics of the publishing industry. What would it publish? What would it not publish? Right? So if you really think about it, if the text doesn't have an apparent politics, it will have it will have politics that grounds it, that shapes its assumptions. A lot of people in Pakistan, like Raja Gid, I published an article about it too. But deep down, if you read that novel, what is the political message in it, right? Other than, debates about Pakistan and how it came to be. But the political message in it is a certain kind of, esoteric way of dealing with life, right? Its politics is a kind of escapist route to this other reality where all your problems will be solved, right? That is its politics, right? It's trying to teach us that. It is an illiberal work, right? Because it privileges non-rational modes of dealing with the real, right? And apotheosizes them. That's its politics, right? अब उसके मुकाबले में you pick up any of the books of Tedi Lakir, if you pick that up, Ismat Chughtai, that will tell you this is a strident work that challenges the assumptions of the culture. So it's culturally transformative, it's transgressive, right? And so the texts have these politics. Sometimes they announce them, sometimes they don't announce them. You have to tease them out. And they are determined by the time in which they were written, right? By the politics and culture that constitutes the subjectivity of the author. and then the publishing environment, what is permitted to be published, what is not permitted to be published. All these constraints are either cultural or political. So that's why my general views about literature, literary studies, talking about literature is that, and I'm going to conclude here so that you can ask me any questions as you like. So my general opinion always has been that knowing that literature is produced and exists within a given culture or in a cross-cultural environment, and that the author and the text are produced within a certain politics, and that we take our own cultural assumptions to an act of reading, and our politics play a role in it, in evaluating a text, in assigning it value. It's important for literary scholars to keep that in mind, because when you keep that in mind and do the work of culture or politics or literature, you will then produce works, that are powerful and that do something in the world, right? That's all I am going to say.